If you're thinking about it,
we're talking about it.
It's all about me. That was a joke.
On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is talkTV.
A very good evening, my friends, and a big welcome to a very special edition of JK Investigates Dangerous Dogs. Now, for many of us, they really are man's best friend, but canine attacks are on the rise. Over the last 20 years, the number of people killed by a dog has increased year on year, and 2022 was the deadliest yet, with 10 Brits being killed by dangerous dogs. And there's already been 2 fatal attacks this year, of course. Dog walker Natasha Johnson was mauled to death when her charges suddenly turned on her, and 4-year-old schoolgirl Alice Stones was killed in her own back garden. And with nearly 9,000 hospitalised last year from bites, costing the NHS an estimated 71 million quid, the current laws in place clearly are not fit for purpose. Our question tonight is, what can be done to turn the tide on this epidemic? Now, earlier I spoke to Sharon Archibald, who was the victim of a savage dog attack from her new pet. I want to say you might find some of the images used in this interview distressing, but here she is, Sharon, bravely sharing her harrowing story with me.
We'd had dogs in the past. The one that we had the longest, 16 years, he passed away. We left it a couple of years and then we decided, should we go and get another dog? And that's what we did. I sent a message out on Facebook. Does anybody know of any kennels that have dogs, that we want to give to a loving home?
And that's part of this story, isn't it? Because via Facebook, trying to do the right thing as an animal lover, you got in contact with what you believed was a legit rescue shelter, but almost immediately there were sort of red flags. Tell the story about how it came to be that you ended up with the particular dog and the sort of pressure they put on you.
I got a message from one of the girls I used to work with. She says, I'm in touch with somebody that works with the kennels. So they put me in touch. I sent a message over to them, said, I'm interested in giving a home to a pet, to a dog. And they said, well, it just so happens we have got a dog. His name's Moose, and she described him. She sent me photographs. I thought, what a lovely looking dog. It really was very nice. It was loving to begin with. Let's put it that way.
Did they do any home checks on you as a potential owner?
No. And one of the girls that did work for the kennel, she only lives about 3 miles up the road from me. And I said, are you going to come round to the house? Because I've rescued a dog before. We had people come round to make sure that we were suitable and whether we were suitable for a dog as well. She says, no, it doesn't matter about that. She says, I can trust you. I can see that you've had pets before. She was just trying to speak nice to me, I think.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I think in these sort of situations, hindsight's a great thing. You were actually handed the dog, I believe, first up in a car park.
Yeah. I did say I would like to meet him first, and then I kind of got the impression that if I didn't take that dog there and then, or on the Saturday morning, then something was going to happen to the dog. They didn't actually say the dog was going to be destroyed, but they gave me the impression that was the case.
Almost emotional blackmail. So you get the dog in this car park from a handler, I suspect. Was there a payment? At that point, did you think this is weird? I'm not a dog owner, but in a car park seems slightly strange. Did you have to make a payment? Tell me about that.
Not there and then. I'd already paid up front for the dog. Stupid. In hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I don't know what I was thinking of, to be honest.
I know this is a hard question, but we're trying to build a case here to warn people with your wonderful help this evening. Were there any red flags when it seemed to be a lot cheaper than any other dog of the same breed? Were there red flags when they handed it to you in a car park? Serious question.
I think from what I can remember, the reason why they deducted, I think it was 480 to begin with, and they did deduct it down to 350. And because I said to them, well, I can't afford to pay that amount. straight up. She says, well, what if we say 350 then? So, I mean, yeah, alarm bells were ringing because I'm thinking that they were too eager to drop the price.
This is really interesting as well. I was told by the researchers that when you got the dog home that first day, you thought it was overly calm. Did you suspect the dog had been sedated by these dreadful people?
I did, yes, because for the first few days, I mean, I'd sit outside in the garden with him. I'd throw a ball, and he just wasn't interested in running after it, like all dogs do. He just wasn't interested. And a couple of times, even my husband said to me, you know, we both thought the same thing. He's very quiet. He's very sleepy, isn't he, for a dog?
I can tell by looking at you. I can tell by looking at you that you're not only nervous, but what this story is doing. But if you're okay with this, tell everybody when that dog turned aggressive and what happened.
4 days later, I'd finished work at 6 o'clock. I mean, I was still working at home anyway. Came downstairs. My husband was dishing up dinner. I went into the kitchen, and the dog, he just jumped up on the counter, put his front paws on the countertop, and I said, get down. And he just went for me out of nowhere. I honestly didn't even know what to do.
What did he do to you?
He just went for my breast first of all. He went for my hand. I tried to get him off. You know when you give a dog a toy and you try and pull it away from him and they're shaking their head, trying to snatch it from you? He was like that.
Your husband saved you, didn't he?
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, what has it done to you?
I can't go out. I cannot go out. I cannot go and visit family if they've got a dog. I can't. I mean, I've got a new neighbour that's moved in next door. They've got a dog, and I can't even go and sit in my back garden anymore.
It's so appalling. And this is from a family, a woman who, you'd be a dog lover. What happened to this animal?
When my husband phoned for an ambulance, the police arrived first. They said, given the nature of the telephone call, they had to come out. Under the Dangerous Dog Act, the dog would have to be destroyed. I had a choice whether I wanted the dog shot or whether I could have him put to sleep, and I chose the latter. I didn't want him to, I mean, I know he was going to die anyway, but I didn't want him to be in pain.
You're an amazing lady. There's an important message here, which is why we wanted to do this story, and I appreciate it beyond appreciation, Sharon. You believe now, don't you, that this, you know, if you call it rescue shelter, was in fact nothing more than a puppy farm?
I do think, yeah, we had, there was a couple of people that worked on the admin side of things of this rescue kennel place. They were so upset over what had happened. They got in touch with me and said they wanted to help me out, and they give me some background information. One of them did say that it was a front for a puppy farm.
Can I ask you the obvious question, Sharon? And it's such a shame to hear your story, because as a dog lover and as somebody who was doing what you believed was right, to be treated like this. But what we're after, what we need is your warning, if you like, and your message to people who think it's okay to set up what are not obviously rescue shelters, are puppy farms, and con the public, the dog-loving public, into buying animals that are obviously not in a good place at all. What is your message?
I wouldn't do it. I mean, if anybody decides to go ahead and rescue a dog from the kennels, get all the information as you can beforehand.
So the question for us tonight is why are dog attacks on the rise and who is at fault? Joining me to discuss this is dog behaviourist Hannah Malloy and vet Dr Rory Callum. Guys, thank you so much indeed. Firstly, both of you, let's start with you, Hannah. Your response to Sharon's story, tragic, really.
Horrific, just horrific. So many layers of trauma, and it should never have happened to her. And all I can say is to Sharon and to everyone that's experienced that kind of trauma is, you can get help to get over that. Like, that is a horrific story. Yeah, really bad.
I mean, you never want to hear these things. They happen all the time. And I hear these stories, not to maybe this extent, but I hear these regularly. And people make so many mistakes when it comes to getting a dog, as you know, I'm sure you know. And it's so heartbreaking because just a few things, educating people, just stops those things happening.
OK, let's start, because we're going to do this show in different sections to try and do that deep dive we promised. No doubt the dog attacks are on the rise year on year. For both of you, how long has this been a growing problem?
I think as far as dogs have become a popular pet, you know, I mean, as there are more dogs every single year, there are going to be more dog-on-dog interactions. There are going to be more dog-on-human interactions. So naturally, we need to be aware of how we control possible aggression situations.
I mean, it's doubled in the last few years, isn't it, in the United Kingdom?
It's tripled over the last 30 years. It's as simple as that. You know, dog bites have tripled, specifically in an region of women between 35 and 65. That demographic has seen a huge rise, and this is dogs biting at home. Specifically, we do a lot of intervention that looks at dealing with dogs in the public, but actually dogs are biting at home. We really need to be managing.
Is this across the spectrum? Children, parents, whatever. You are both going to tell me, because you were watching that video and I was watching you closely, that this is not the dog's fault. It's the environment, it's the training, it's everything, right?
I would actually say it's a little bit of both. So yes, it's 100% humans' problem. We've created dogs, we've bred them, we've trained them. It's our responsibility wholeheartedly to fix this issue. But to say, you know, it's not just, there's no bad dogs isn't true. You know, not every
This is my point, Rory, because last time we talked about, you see, you're shaking your head. Now, last time we talked in detail about lockdown, and certainly during lockdown, more and more people got that pet because they were on their own. And there is undoubted proof that there wasn't the training, the knowledge, and maybe the care and attention to detail that there should be. But I really want to challenge you on this. Are you telling me, if you look at the human population, you see some of the horrors that take place, we know there are what I would call bad apples and evil people who through no amount of training or nothing, they're just bad people. You've surely got to acknowledge that there are bad dogs. You have to.
No. I firmly believe no dog is born bad. It is the early experiences that they are exposed to that cause that bad behaviour and cause that aggression and cause how they act in the world. There's such a huge nurture point to how a dog behaves. Yes, there are natures, but with the appropriate management and the appropriate owner and breeder, ultimately no dog is always going to end up aggressive. You could take all of the dogs on the planet. I guarantee you that in the right hands, all of those dogs would behave.
So if we're talking about the right hands, both of you, and I wanted to put this to you. I mean, we mentioned this again last time. Social media, you go, what's that got to do with the rise in dog bites? But I mean, some of the TikTok videos that you see of people messing around with their dogs and doing stupid things, winding them up in essence, Hannah.
Yeah. It's not okay. It's really not okay. We need to have some respect for the animal. It's really easy to push any individual to a point where they would snap if they're not able to escape a situation that they're frightened of. And we really are challenging. The level of normal for hanging out with a dog these days is appalling. People are like, what happens when I poke it repeatedly in the face? Oh, guess what? It's going to bite you. So yeah, it's got to stop. Like, we really need to take responsibility for what we're teaching our children.
So dog attacks are on the rise, in your opinions, both of you, because there's a lack of intelligence in terms of training, there's a lack of knowledge, the advent of social media, this, my dog's got this, your dog's got that. These dogs are reacting because they get stressed. Would that be fair enough?
100%. Any dog put in, conversely to my previous point, any dog put in a stressful situation or the incorrect situation is a potential bite risk, without a shadow of a doubt. My own dog would absolutely bite if I put her in a massively stressful situation and she reached the threshold of biting. Every dog has that potential.
But do you not, help me out with this, do you not as owners think that there is any point that your dog could turn on you? Because I've always tried to do this programme, JK Live, for the people out there who have questions. And there will be people who read the media at the moment and watch programmes and listen to the radio and go, my God, this country is running amok with dangerous dogs and we're all going to be attacked and it's too scared. And I know from a vet's point of view and a behaviourist, you think that sounds crazy, but I think people need reassurance. I really do.
100%. And we need to stop being so frightened, actually. No dog just bites. There's so many things that lead up to a dog bite. It's really important to know that. When you see a dog who has gone for somebody on a social media post, there were early things that people didn't notice. you know, nobody just punches somebody in the pub. That's a child who hasn't learned how to share in the same way we need to teach puppies some frustration tolerance, some impulse control. And in the same way, I actually disagree with Rory. I think some dogs can, if they've been bred from fearful parents, be inherently more fearful. But there's lots that we can do with training, as you say, to make that dog capable.
We'll get into the whole debate about how you should be allowed to own a dog like that, and whether I think people should have to have a license, do whatever. You know, you see these stories, and Sharon's touched me enormously there, and the dog was put down. Do you think that dogs that attack can be rehabilitated?
I think from a public safety and public confidence point of view, hand on heart, I think dogs that have bitten to that level, as in Sharon's case, I think ultimately the only option is destruction of the dog.
And one final question. What advice can we give briefly for people to prevent an attack? You heard Sharon there. She's been a dog lover all her life. Destroyed her confidence.
You need to get to know the dog and go really slowly. The amount of people I know that get rescue dogs and they go, he's in my bed, first night, you know, that's a stranger. So think about setting boundaries with that dog. Think about setting safe spaces, allowing them to settle into your routine. Don't just immediately go, this is my best friend and we're going to be best friends forever. Because a lot of people just put themselves in really dangerous situations with new dogs.
For now, guys, thank you. More later. Next on JK Investigates. A rule change in 2012 made puppy smuggling big business. Illegal imports resulted in huge fraudulent profits, often with deadly consequences. We'll discuss that and puppy farming after the break, and coming right back. Welcome back to JK Investigates. Now, during lockdown, of course, thousands in the UK wanted a furry friend to keep them company. However, with the increase in demand came an increase in price for a poot due to the ruthless world of puppy trading. Criminals behind puppy breeding capitalised on the demand and sold the country's favourite pets for increasingly high prices. Some of these puppies are kept in cages and have water supplied to them via a pipe. Now, the Tories had promised to crack down on puppy farms and puppy smuggling in their 2019 manifesto. But, of course, last month they threw out the Kept Animals Bill, which would have outlawed this. Earlier, we spoke to MP Andrea Jenkins, friend of the show, who started a petition to reverse her party's decision to scrap the bill.
I unwittingly got my dog Godiva from a puppy farm in Lincolnshire, which subsequently got closed down. And with these wonderful puppies, unfortunately, they're bred in such a poor way that they have so many health concerns. And I've been speaking to animal welfare charities out there where they've got a puppy. And it happens so often, and the puppy dies. And can you imagine that impact on that family? So it's something so important that we need to outlaw. There's so many variables as to whether puppy smuggling and the ban on live exports, etc., will get done in the short time we've got left of this Parliament. I really hope that the government delivers on this, and I'll certainly be pushing like mad. And so I urge the Prime Minister, look, please reintroduce this bill and let's get it signed off and sent to the Lords. We are a nation of animal lovers. Let's demonstrate that the Conservatives are too.
Joining me to discuss this is Ian Muttett, Chief Inspector Special Operations, the unit of the RSPCA, and Nick Weston, Head of International Campaigns for Four Paws. Gentlemen, welcome both. Thank you so much indeed. Can we start, Ian, by asking the obvious question? What is the difference, for people watching this in layman's terms, between a puppy farm and puppy smuggling?
OK, so a puppy farm would be the premises where dogs are bred on a commercial basis. So large numbers of breeding bitches, the female adult dog that puppies are born to, and being bred, kept purely for that purpose, breeding litter after litter as soon as they're able to. Puppy smuggling is the legal importation of those dogs into the UK to be sold from places like Southern Ireland and Europe, often covertly brought into the country, smuggled in vehicles with fake paperwork or no paperwork at all, to then be sold on the open market.
Nick, smuggling illegally innocent animals into this country, I mean, that doesn't say an awful lot. And I said in the introduction, in the Tory manifesto in 2019, they talked about changing this. You heard from Andrea Jenkins. That's been thrown out. How is this allowed to go on, my friend?
Well, when we talk about it as a problem, it's an international problem. It's not just something that happens in the UK. We talk about puppies coming from as far as Eastern Europe. And then while we talk about a lot of them being smuggled illegally, they can be brought into the country just as easily through legal means. You can bring five dogs into the country as your own pets. So it's quite easy. If you have a network of, say, 10 people bringing in 5 dogs at a time, you suddenly got 50 puppies into the country. So it's a load of loopholes that are exploited internationally that allow this trade to thrive.
And the criminals, Ian, and you would know this with the RSPCA, they're becoming more and more sophisticated. This is big business, isn't it?
It really is, yes, and we're seeing an increasing scale of organised crime behind these setups and these commercial selling entities, and they'll go to great lengths to deceive the public in what they are actually buying. Things like renting properties, producing false paperwork, false vaccination records, all of it designed to make the buyer think they're buying a legitimate puppy, when often that's not the case. These are actually puppy farm puppies that have been brought in often on the day of the sale.
I mean, some of the pictures on screen, and I've said this before, I don't own a dog, but some of them, it just breaks your heart. You work with the sort of team that are trying to crack down on this. Are you making progress? Are you seeing more of these places or less?
Our team's been tirelessly working in this area of work for the last 5 to 10 years. We saw a significant increase during lockdown with the numbers of dogs and particularly with the values. We're relentlessly working on investigations across the country, continuously, really. We've organised groups, smuggling puppies, selling them, often making tens of thousands of pounds a month from the sale of these dogs.
This is changing my whole view of dogs. Nick, can I be absolutely honest? I mean, look at that poor creature on screen. What's the condition like of so many of these animals being kept in?
These animals are kept in awful conditions, as Ian said. Like, the dog will often arrive into the country on the day it's being sold. They're sort of being bred to demand. And in order to drive their profit margins, they're kept in appalling conditions. And in fact, images like this and understanding this situation is also partly part of the issue. As we become more aware, we feel that we need to rescue these dogs from the situation. So there's an emotional blackmail element going on where someone sees this dog and they think, oh, maybe it's been farmed, maybe it's been smuggled. I should buy it to take it out of the awful trade. And of course, then what they're inadvertently doing is continuing to perpetuate this trade.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if you were watching, but at the beginning of the show, Sharon Archibald shared that story, the exact story that you've just said, found out what she thought was a puppy farm on Facebook. We talked about red flags, thought it was a charity. They wanted to meet her in a car park. It was really, really cheap. The dog seemed very docile. 4 days later, attacked her. We're seeing a lot of this on social media, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Any method that can convince the public to buy, and we see some using the false charity angle. We see some producing false paperwork, and often the first time anyone knows that what they bought is not quite what they thought is when within 24, 48 hours it becomes ill with really quite serious diseases like parvovirus, Campylobacter giardia, and the puppy deteriorates really quickly, and suddenly that very expensive new addition to a family is in the vets costing thousands of pounds, and the puppy dealer has long gone and taken the money and made their profit.
Nick, what does the government need to do to prevent this? Because anybody watching this would be touched by those videos and also touched by Sharon's story earlier. What needs to be done to control this disgusting thing, to be fair?
Well, first of all, as it's already been mentioned, we need to tighten the rules on how the puppies come into the country. But also there's a lot to be said for the classified ads and the various websites and social media who need to be held to account for those that they're enabling the trade. We can talk about the people bringing the dogs into the country, but they're selling them online. And there needs to be a system where the sales of the dogs can be verified online, so this buyer can feel safe and they know what they're buying. So there's a lot to be done, but there are lots of avenues to cut down on this trade.
This animal welfare bill, Ian, that was dropped by the government. I mean, let's not make this political, but that's appalling in itself because animals have always been at the forefront of a lot of people in this country. It got dropped. It was for stopping illegal puppy smuggling, the exact thing that we're talking about. Why was it dropped? What has that done to people like you? What would you say to the government?
It's really frustrating that the Kept Animals Bill hasn't gone through, and obviously we're now looking at ways for it to be reheard. What it was looking to do, that particular bill, was tidy up a number of the loopholes that existed around importing puppies, transport of young dogs, but also things like ear cropping and acquiring dogs with their ears cut off that were being brought into the country, and to prevent that from happening. It's really frustrating that it's not gone through, and obviously we'd appeal for it to be reheard at its earliest possibility.
Well, like I said, I have not got a dog, but doing this tonight makes you think absolutely. Nick, we've talked about illegal puppy smuggling. Dogs are being stolen by the load, aren't they, in the United Kingdom as well? And that's down to value, I suppose, is it?
Well, so if they're being stolen, then they can be resold. It's essentially the same issue when you're buying a dog online, which has been mentioned is already where most of this trade comes from. You don't know which dog you're buying until you see it, and by the time you've taken it home, if it's been stolen or it's sick, it doesn't really matter. Like as Ian said, the seller is gone. So whichever is the quickest way to make easy money, really.
Ian, again, the whole idea of tonight is not to scare people, it's to warn people, it's to give people some practical tools by which to deal with stuff, and also a few warnings. What would you say, from an RSPCA point of view, should be the red flags? What should people do when they're looking to buy from a puppy farm? What should they be looking out for?
So what we often see is a lot of these red flags people pick up on once it starts to go wrong. So once the animal becomes ill, they'll then start to check on the Facebook ad, they'll start to check the number, they'll do the research on the breeder. I can't emphasise this enough. The first thing we'd urge anyone to do is consider adopting. There's hundreds of animals up and down the country looking for new homes in rehoming centres like ours that can be, adopted. However, if people do insist on buying a puppy and want to buy a puppy, there's a lot of information available on our website. There's the puppy contract, which sets out all of the things to look for. So things like the adult bitch being there, the mum being there, and a good relationship between the mum and the puppies. The breeder has got an existing client base and people that can be approached who may have bought dogs previously. They should want to develop a rapport with that breeder prior to buying the puppy. And it should almost be a vetting the other way around, that the breeder and the seller is actually doing the checks on the person as much as you're doing checks. do your research first before making the purchase.
Yeah, more from you later. Nick, final word from you. Really appreciate you joining us tonight. It strikes me that people are being played with emotionally. You know, this dog needs rescuing. It strikes me that people are not doing enough research and criminals are taking advantage of that. What would your advice be to people watching tonight?
My advice would mirror Ian's. There is plenty of information out there. RSPCA website, the Four Paws website. We sum up the issue with 3 words: cute, quick, and sick. People go find a dog online. They think it's cute. They buy it quickly, and then the dog gets sick. Take your time. If you must buy a dog, do your research. Find a dog that's appropriate for you, and take your time in purchasing that dog. If someone's trying to force a quick sale on you, it's likely that they're not interested in a dog's welfare, and it's probably been smuggled or been farmed. So take your time. Do not feel that you have to buy a dog if it comes from suspicious circumstances. Unfortunately, you might think you're rescuing that dog, but you're just perpetuating terrible situations for others.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. More from you later, Ian. And next on Jeremy Kyle Investigates, 4 dangerous dog breeds are banned in the United Kingdom. The big question for us tonight, should there be more? More of that after the break. We're coming back in 3.
Good evening, I'm Piers Morgan, Uncensored in New York City. Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored in Kyiv, Ukraine. Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored, special edition from Qatar. Tonight, a special edition of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Martina Navratilova.
He's making me cry again.
Do you believe you can win this war? So are you going to run again?
I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
Yes, I feel betrayed.
They're trying to force you out.
Yes, not only the coach, but the other 2 or 3 guys there around.
All these people protesting just don't get it.
Many of them don't.
Isn't that slightly patronising?
I would call him Yoo-hoo out the window.
Do you think we should have psychiatric assessments?
Oh, I'd be there for weeks.
Could you keep quiet? I'm trying to read a book here.
Take spare and chuck it where it belongs, in the bin.
Where's Suggsy? All of madness, where are they?
Where's their cheering?
Where's Brian May, for God's sake? Why isn't Brian May? Why isn't someone on the roof of the palace?
With the castle,
Where have they gone?
It's from that much cushier jail that Ghislaine Maxwell agreed to be interviewed for the very first time.
Well, he wished I'd never met him.
You're shaking your head. The British people are up in arms.
Boris Johnson is out as British Prime Minister.
The Conservative Party can certainly win the next election.
Can we?
Yes.
Labour are
absolutely.
29 points ahead in the polls. Can we?
This is the royal tea.
Question is, did he say, yes, I have taken drugs, and they bent the rules to give him the visa, or lied on the visa application form and therefore got it?
What is a woman made?
Let it roll.
A woman is given to the man in marriage.
Andrew, you're simply wrong. I've been a terrible liar.
That's true.
I mean, would you be prepared to say that?
I've been a terrible liar.
Are you sorry you said that?
No.
I don't think it matters. You should be.
Absolutely not.
You should be.
Interview adjourned.
Which is your favourite nickname that Trump's given you? Rhonda Sanctimonious or Meatball Ron?
I seen you clown Tommy Fury, so please go easy on me, bro. Please go easy.
You weren't asked to give evidence to the grand jury.
I have nothing to hide. I'm the only one that has been telling the truth.
If you had to come up against a team that had a Russian player, would you shake their hand?
No chance. No chance.
It's life and death.
This is war.
Piers Morgan, uncensored!
What went wrong? She said, well, I've only got 2 years. And I said, you'll have 2 months if you carry on like this.
What's your response to him?
The whole nation deserves to know what happened.
You don't drink, never taken drugs. You're stinking rich. Should we be concerned, Prime Minister?
Real opinions, real debate.
Is about you and your opinions.
If you're thinking about it,
We're talking about it.
It's all about me. That was a joke.
This is talkTV.
Welcome back. You're watching Jeremy Kyle Investigates. Now, the Dangerous Dogs Act was introduced in 1991 in an attempt to make Britain safer, and it basically outlawed 4 breeds deemed too dangerous for the public. They were the Japanese Tosa, the Dogo Argentino, the Fila Brasileiro, and the Pit Bull Terrier. But of course, the question is, with dog attacks on the rise, should more dog breeds be banned, or should we reintroduce dog ownership licences? To discuss this, Dr. Rory and Hannah are still with me. Plus, we're joined by dog behaviourist Ryan O'Meara. Ryan, welcome. You two, welcome back. Hannah, can I start with you? You've been pushing for reforms through Parliament, and we talked about how the Animal Welfare Act was promised by the Tories in 2019 and thrown out. The public will look at these horrific attacks and they will say, what can our government do to stop them? What would your advice be?
Well, the good news is a lot is being done. So Wayne David is leading the charge with dog bite reform. We're backed by Emma Whitfield, who sadly lost her son, Jack Liss, tragically a couple of years ago. So we're not going to stop until this changes, is the truth. And what we need is all of the evidence in order to make informed decisions.
Can I just say, Wayne David is a Labour MP and, like Andrea Jenkins, is very keen. Sadly, a constituency member of his was killed by one attack. This is him talking about the current legislation. Have a watch.
The legislation in 1991 was introduced as a knee-jerk reaction. It wasn't properly thought through. Just 4 dogs are listed as dangerous, which is ridiculous. But equally, we can't just call for the adding of dogs to a long list. Otherwise, goodness knows how long the list would be. What we need is a fundamentally different approach, so that we look at the issue of dog breeding, the issue of training, the issue of ownership, how sales are made. And we need to be looking at how local authorities are able to monitor the situation and perhaps consider some sort of licensing in some form or other.
Ryan, if I can bring you in, and thank you for joining us tonight. Many people say the Dangerous Dogs Act is outdated. Let me ask you, as you sit there with a very docile-looking dog that I wouldn't be within 50 yards of, do you think, and I know you're very keen, but I'm trying to give to people who are scared, who are reading about these attacks, I'm trying to give them an overview. Do you think there are other breeds that we need to be banning or we need to be looking out for? What's your view on this, Ryan?
Well, definitely not is my immediate response to that, because if we look at the Dangerous Dogs Act, and you've cited the 4 breeds, but there's one important distinction with the pit bull. So the 3 other breeds, the Tosa, the Fila Brasileiro and the Dogo Argentina, they were never really in this country in the first place. The pit bull, there's a key word in the legislation, pit bull type dog. Now, type means any dog that fits the physical description of being a pit bull. So what happens is dogs are seized that have never done anything wrong, never shown any signs of aggression, and in court there will be 2 sides arguing about whether that dog is a pit bull type. So what you're essentially trying to do when it comes to banning dog breed types, it's a bit like trying to ban fruit salad without actually banning fruit. So I've got a dog here, she's a crossbreed. Now she could be a Doberman type or a Rottweiler type. She is, in fact, a Doberman cross Rottweiler. But what about if she was a bit Rottweiler-y type or a bit Doberman-y type? Banning breeds doesn't work in terms of implementation, and it doesn't work as a way to try and protect people from dogs. There are no bad breeds. There are definitely bad owners and bad breeders, but trying to get to the bottom of this problem by identifying fundamentally broken or dangerous breeds will lead to more problems that we've seen ever since the Dangerous Dogs Act came in.
So interestingly, Rory, if I can bring you in, you said at the very beginning that there are no dangerous and bad dogs. It is ownership. Let's talk about something that we touched upon when we were talking about those dog attacks, which was social media. It seems to me, and I know Wayne David agrees, that many of these bigger dogs are status symbols. We talked about TikTok videos. I've got the biggest dog, I crop its ears. And this doesn't help at all. This is a major issue, isn't it?
It's fashion. And ultimately these dogs, you mentioned cropped ears. There's a huge rise in dogs being imported and cropped in our own country. It is plain illegal. It is breaking the law and ultimately making these dogs aggressive because they're being put through these painful procedures. Now, look, I'm not going to disagree with you that some dogs can possibly cause more harm than others. Chihuahua versus Doberman Rottweiler cross, for example. Clearly, if that big dog attacks you, probably going to do more damage than a Chihuahua. But you cannot persecute a breed based upon its size and its potential damage. And it just doesn't work. We've got 32 years of evidence it doesn't work, because every single year there are more attacks and more deaths.
We'll talk about... I just wonder, this is actually Wayne David again, the Labour MP, talking about how gangs, this is really interesting, are using these big dogs. Have a listen.
We've seen some individuals buy in inappropriate dogs and use them as status symbols. And we've seen a link with criminality being developed as well, with illicit breeding taking place, animals being imported from different places. And we think that it's all part of a general trend, unfortunately, to have irresponsible ownership of so many dogs. And it's putting the emphasis on the humans, not just the dogs, which is very, very important.
Ryan, if I could bring you back in, Rory said at the top of the show that he doesn't believe there are any really dangerous dogs. It's about training. We've spoken before, and you absolutely fundamentally, I know, agree with that. My question to all of you lot who are dog lovers and behaviourists, and there's a wolf on your lap, but you're as cool as anything, why are people allowed to buy these animals then so readily? When you have to pass a test to drive a car, you have to have a wedding licence. Why in the name of God doesn't somebody who cares about these animals and cares about these attacks do something to facilitate a situation where people have to, I don't know, pass a test, have a licence, go on a mandatory course and prove they're competent enough to have one of these animals?
We're on the same page, Jeremy. I've been calling for exactly that for the best part of 2 decades. And the reason is because you're right, what we have at the moment, if we imagine a scenario where what we said to people was, when you get to 17, 18, just have a go at driving, see how it works out. You don't have to know anything about the highway code. You don't have to know one end of a car from another. Just give it a go, give it a bash. We would see carnage. And with dogs, we have pretty much got that approach, in so much as anyone can breed a dog, and fundamentally there are people breeding dogs who should not be breeding dogs, and anybody can own a dog. And I'm quite confident in saying that some people are not going to be good dog owners, and there are some people who could be good dog owners with the right dog. And so we've got this approach at the moment that simply in 1991, what we did is we said the problem with dangerous dogs is restricted to these 4 breeds, which is a terrible approach and has been proven to be a terrible approach. If we want to fix this problem, we need root and branch change. And that's not tinkering around the edges, which is what I've heard too often, which is adding a bit here, taking a bit there. We need proper reform of breeding, and breeding is something we need to focus on. We need good, responsible breeders. We need those people, and we need to root out bad breeders. And then we need something that says if you want to get a dog, you have to at least prove the bare minimum level of competence. Do you understand your responsibilities as a dog owner? Yes or no?
I agree. Hannah, dog licences. Explain to me, the person who doesn't really understand too much about this, why there used to be back in the day and there aren't. Surely having a dog licence would prove... Do you not have to pass a test to get that dog licence or answer criteria? Why would that not be the case?
Yeah, the old one, no. You just had to pay a couple of pence to your post office and you would get your dog licence.
Couple of pence.
It's about 37p, I think it was.
Right. Just have a Mars bar at 5p. I'm that old.
Exactly, look.
All right.
So these days, what we really want, what I would love to see is a dog licence come in that brings an enforcement fund that says, look, we've got the money. It's costing us £777 million. It's costing the NHS to have these...
770 million quid to deal with the 9,000 dog bites a year?
Yeah.
So the licensing system needs to be brought back in.
I 100% think that
I've got a feeling that our own 50 Shades of Grey lookalike is going to disagree. Is that right?
I do. I think a licence, it can't be that strong, or there have to be ways for certain demographics to be able to own a dog.
But hold on a second. Let me take you on. You're a vet.
Yep.
You're making money when people get bitten or their dogs are having problems. Answer me this. How would you... For the people watching this like me, OK, who's got young kids and keeps reading about this and goes, geez, man, am I in danger if I go to the park? The other day, I've got Oliver, who's 3, he's running across the park, and I saw one of them, it looked like a Doberman or whatever it was, grabbed him. You can sit there, and I respect you enormously, but what I want to know is what you would say to those people who are saying, well, if it's too easy to get one of these breeds and you're all irresponsible, which sets off the stress, You surely must be behind a system that says you've got to pass a test or have something that stringently teaches you how to make sure that dog is safe.
Yes, ultimately there has to be something brought in. I don't think a dog licence is the right answer. I think ultimately that isolates, that makes dogs a real commodity for people who can afford the time and the money to be able to get that. And that cannot be, because I work with a lot of homeless charities and these people rely on their dogs so wholeheartedly. I would hate to see any barrier to that. However, I take your point and I agree with you. There needs to be some sort of educational piece put in, mandatory, to stop this.
There's room for that, though. I think we would create space for that, you know. I would never want to see a homeless person have to go without their dog.
Very interesting. Loads more to come. And next on Jeremy Kyle Investigates, this is awful. Dog fighting was banned in 1835, quite rightly, yet there are 1,500 fights every year. The big question, why is it still happening? We'll do that after the break. I'm coming right back. Welcome back to Jeremy Kyle Investigates. Now, the blood sport of animal fighting was rightly outlawed in the UK in 1835. Unbelievably, still to this day, sickening amateur dogfights take place every day in the UK, with more than 1,500 reports of dogfights being reported to the RSPCA every year. All over the country, innocent dogs are being trained as killers to fight, and bets worth hundreds of pounds are being waged before dogs quite literally attack each other. Often these fights are advertised on social media. Now, you may find the following footage upsetting. Can you drop that? I have to say, listen, I don't want to play any more of that. There was loads more, but to me, that's too distressing. I'd like to bring back two guests, RSPCA Chief Inspector Ian Muttett and vet Dr. Rory. That's disgusting. Can I ask you something, Ian? You work for the RSPCA. Is that financial gain by those low lives, or are they just sick?
Sadly, financial gain is a byproduct of this blood sport, and in the main, individuals involved are doing it for a passion for dogfighting and for training dogs to fight.
That's disgusting. As a vet, when you look at that, because presumably you have to deal with these injuries, you know, 1,500... How is that not outlawed? How is the government and the police and authorities not able to do more? These people should be locked up, shouldn't they?
I mean, ultimately, it comes down to enforcement. And, you know, there are some very great people like Ian working tirelessly to control this, but 1,500 cases, you know, that how do you police it?
When you see that, as a vet,
sickens me. Absolutely sick. I couldn't watch that. That was awful.
Can I bring Ryan Amira, dog behaviourist, back in? Ryan, you talked about breeding before. Are the sorts of dogs taking part in those disgusting images, are they bred specifically for that, my friend?
They are, sadly, which I think the fact that in 1835 we as a society said, hang on, this is intolerable. You know, in 1835 we decided that's too cruel for us to tolerate. Because traditionally the pit type dogs that were, you know, that's where the name comes from, they were asked to fight in a pit. The same with cockfighting, and the same with a number of barbaric practices that we as a society deemed unacceptable. There is I hate to use the word, but a heritage. There is a heritage when it comes to dogfighting, where obviously there is a certain type of person, a very sick person, that does get their kicks from the idea of breeding and rearing and then putting their dog into a pit with another dog to tear each other apart. And ultimately, I just have to ask the question, as a society, I wouldn't want to share a bus with somebody that got their kicks that way. And there is a very clear link between those people who are animal abusers who also commit violent crimes against people.
I wouldn't disagree. Can you, I mean, when you see, I know you don't want to see it, but can dogs like that survive, or do they have to be destroyed?
I mean, the first thing I do is put it to sleep. I mean, when they get those level of injuries, I mean, we were talking about dangerous dogs, and, you know, ultimately, every dog is dangerous, and those dogs with that much muscling and that size, the injuries they can sustain to deal out is just horrendous, absolutely horrendous.
But I was reading, there was research, wasn't there? They keep them fighting sometimes even if they're injured, give them a couple of months off. I mean, you investigate this, Ian. I mean, growing up, they used to tell us about bare-knuckle boxing. I mean, this is horrific. I mean, one of the things about Jeremy Kyle Investigates is to actually do a deep dive. I genuinely, if you'd asked me before tonight, had absolutely no idea in 2023, in what is supposed to be a civilised society, though it's quite screwed up, isn't it, that that's allowed. These people should be strung up.
It's totally unlawful, and where we receive information or intelligence, we will proactively look to identify...
Does the law help you in dealing with these people? So if you came into... Say something was going on in an area, what power do you have? Can these people be arrested? Can they be prosecuted? What?
Yeah, so the Animal Welfare Act, it's a clear offence of being present at an animal fight, participating in an animal fight, even keeping an animal for the purpose of an animal fight.
They go to jail?
Yeah, absolutely.
How long for?
I mean, the powers have recently been improved, and for causing suffering or fighting, then you're looking at up to 5 years in prison.
Of which you'll spend 6 months waiting to go to court, and then you get half out for good behaviour. This country's on its backside. 1,500 of these a year. How do you police it?
Yeah, I mean, the 1,500 will be the number of reports to us, and they will vary in severity. However, the sort of top-end organised dogfighting, they're the sort of proactive element that we investigate, and they still are on a frequent scale.
Do you know what I thought was very interesting? I'll bring you in, Rory, as well. Is Ian said there is financial gain, but even financial gain, and I know, you know, I've always tried to be honest on this show. I'm not a dog lover, I haven't been, but seeing them kept in cages and seeing that, you got to be pretty sick, very sick,
twisted, utterly twisted, and you know, what Ryan said is these people that get involved in this sort of circle, they're ultimately doing other crime. They are involved in drugs. They're involved in human trafficking sometimes, even to that extent. And it's all linked. If we look at things like puppy imports, if we look at things like imported dogs with cropped ears, it's all linked. It's all being run by the
When
same
you
people.
see one of these 1,500 fights, which is disgusting in itself, as a vet, can a dog ever, and I'm not talking about the injuries, psychologically, can a dog be brought back down, rehabilitated in the right way?
You ask me if there are bad dogs. Once they get to this point, they're bad dogs, and in my opinion, they cannot be saved.
No way back.
So
so that rather backs up what you said at the beginning. We're talking about dogs that are a danger to human life, and here is a very awful example at the end of this show, which says that conditioning, pressure, stress, whatever, cutting the ears can turn it into a killing machine. So that backs your thing that it's people. Would you agree with that, Ian?
It's certainly any animal that's placed in that situation has been placed there by a human, and it's irresponsible ownership. It's totally illegal, it's totally cruel, and it's totally unnecessary, and it's been outlawed for 200 years. It is barbaric. Often the dogs used for dog fighting are already one of the banned breeds anyway. But once the dog's been conditioned to such a level to fight like that, it is very difficult. I mean, we talked about the veterinary aspect. Often these people won't take these dogs to a vet. They can't, because it would be obvious what's happened. So they will self-treat and self-medicate. So all of this is a clandestine world that happens behind the scenes.
This is 2023, for God's sake. What would you say to people who maybe find out about some of this? Again, I said tonight is about trying to, explain to people. What should people do?
I always urge people to report anything that they have awareness of dog fighting, either to the police, to Crime Stoppers, or to the RSPCA directly, and either ourselves or the police jointly will always look to investigate.
It's interesting, isn't it? If I can just bring Ryan in very briefly. Haven't got long, Ryan. We talked earlier about, you talked about breeds, we've talked about licences. In fact, this whole show has started with the public scared about dogs, and yet there seems to be a consensus around this table that there seems to be some sort of ability for people to prove that they're competent. You've got 10 seconds. Would you agree with that to finish, Ryan?
Absolutely. It's about protecting dogs from people, and therefore protecting people from dogs. That's the solution that we all want.
Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Ian, Dr. Rory, Ryan as well. I have to say, all that I've got time for tonight on this special edition of JK Investigates, what's really interesting, I learned more about that tonight, to be honest with you, because I had absolutely no idea at all. When you see those visions, it has to change, and let's hope the government does something about it. Thanks so much indeed for watching more JK Investigates very soon. But that's it for tonight. Take care. We'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye for now.
Good evening, I'm Piers Morgan, Uncensored in New York City. Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored in Kyiv, Ukraine. Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored. A special edition from Qatar. Tonight, a special edition of Piers Morgan Uncensored. Martina Navratilova.
He's making me cry again.
Do you believe you can win this war? So are you going to run again?
I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
Yes, I feel betrayed.
They're trying to force you out.
Yes, not only the coach, but the other 2 or 3 guys there around.
All these people protesting just don't get it.
Many of them don't.
Isn't that slightly patronising?
I would call him yoo-hoo out the window.
Do you think we should have psychiatric assessments?
Oh, I'd be there for weeks.
Could you keep quiet? I'm trying to read a book here.
Take spare and chuck it where it belongs, in the bin.
Where's Suggsy? All of madness, where are they?
Where's their cheering?
Where's Brian May, for God's sake? Why isn't Brian May? Why isn't someone on the roof of the palace?
With the castle,
Where have they gone?
It's from that much cushier jail that Ghislaine Maxwell agreed to be interviewed for the very first time.
Well, he wished I'd never met him.
You're shaking your head. The British people are up in arms.
Boris Johnson is out as British Prime Minister.
The Conservative Party can certainly win the next election.
Can we?
Yes,
Labour are
absolutely.
29 points ahead in the polls. Can we? This is the Royal Tea.
Question is, did he say, yes, I have taken drugs, and they bent the rules to give him the visa, or lied on the visa application form and therefore got it?
What is a woman?